Good evening and welcome to City Council meeting for September 8th, 2020. The meeting is being conducted in accordance with the guidelines established by Governor Sisolak for COVID-19, beginning with Directive 006 and superseded or modified by several others. The public is not available at the meeting tonight, or not. We do not have accommodations, but it is being live streamed. And public comment, you can phone in. There was also information on the agenda to email comments or leave voicemails. With that, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we have a couple of new reserve officers for swearing in. Is it Sean Johansson and Laura Hess? If you'll please come forward.
Just want to stand in front of the podium, in front of the microphone, so we can pick up the sound.
The other side.
Other side, okay.
Yeah.
No, we don't want their backs to the council. We want them to stand in front of the microphone.
Oh, in front of it?
Yeah, so we can hear
of the
them,
podium?
and they can be caught on TV.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Sean Johansson,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States
the Constitution and government of the United States,
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and that I will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance, resolution, or law
any
the ordinance, resolution of the law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state without standing,
and that I will perform well and faithfully
and that I will perform well and faithfully
all the duties of Reserve Police Officer
all the duties of Reserve Police Officer
of Boulder City, Nevada,
of Boulder City, Nevada,
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God, under the pains and penalties of perjury.
So help
So
me
help me
God
God
under
under
all
the pains and evidence of perjury.
Congratulations and welcome. If you could come sign your oath.
I want to say congratulations, and it looks like you have some family members here. Would you like to introduce any of your family members?
Yes,
If you go to the microphone, please. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. So I have my husband and my daughter. I have 3 kids, but she's the only one that came. My nephew, my sister-in-law, and my mother-in-law. Yeah, they're here.
Well, welcome, and again, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is a great program. Really appreciate you helping the community out.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and again, I know I had mentioned at our last meeting that school is back in session, so to speak. Normally, we would welcome 4th graders here who are working on their Nevada citizenship. Again, I know that's not possible right now, but any 4th graders out there who are working on it, please feel free to contact myself or any member of City Council. We'd be happy to talk with you about city government. Okay, we'll move then to our first public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak during this comment period must speak on items that are on the agenda. Time limit of 5 minutes, and as always, we ask that you be civil and concise in your comments. The phone number to call is 702-589-9629. We had someone on hold.
Thank you for holding public comment.
Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name is Mike Sorrentino, and I'm a filmmaker here in Los Angeles. And 3 years ago, I had a film exhibit at the Damn Short Film Festival, and just had a wonderful experience in Boulder City. I found the community to be interesting and charming, and really the crew at Damn Short, they're passionate and caring about what they do, and they're very dedicated. I had such a great experience. Well, when my film exhibited, I brought like 8 friends and crew from our film, and we had a great time staying in town at the hotels and dining at restaurants. And since then, I had such a great experience that I've actually volunteered the last 3 years on the screening committee as a way to kind of give back and support them. So I just wanted to say that I think they're a terrific artistic enterprise in your community, and any way that you guys can support them would be meaningful and go a long way.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? We do have one member of the public in attendance. Please state your name.
Should we wait for them to talk or should I talk?
Madam City Clerk, if you'd like to put them on hold, we'll...
Okay. Good evening. My name is Svetlana Stepanova, and I'm the Executive Director of the Damn Short Film Festival and a Boulder City resident. I'd like to voice my support of the approval of agenda item number 7. The Damn Short Film Festival celebrates independent short film from all over the world and drives promotion of arts and culture in Boulder City. DSFF is approaching its 17th season, February 11th through the 15th, 2021, of providing a platform for unheard voices in film to be recognized. We are taking this opportunity to be creative by proactively planning and preparing to make sure our next festival is safe, inclusive, and stays true to what makes DSFF so special. In the case that COVID-19 prevents us from gathering in the theater, we are researching options for outdoor gatherings and virtual screenings. Fortunately, there are multiple models to follow thanks to the many resilient film festivals dealing with the global crisis. Our industry may never be the same, but knowing the amount of passion that goes into producing events like this, I know we can get through this stronger, better, and prepared for anything that comes our way. The arts bring us together when there's so much out there trying to divide us. So far, we have received 835 films submitted from 35 different countries, well on track to beat last year's record of 1,028 submissions. This is a major feat considering the economic hardships filmmakers are facing. Out of all the festivals out there, they still choose us in hopes we will screen their film. Our commitment to cultivating the best possible experience for our filmmakers, audience, volunteers, and local community has helped make us a cultural institution that drives business to our local economy. It's not by chance that we're ranked as one of the top 100 best-reviewed film festivals in the world out of over 9,000 film festivals and contests around the world. And this is according to the industry's leading festival submission website, Film Freeway. This is all based on filmmaker reviews of our festival. Maintaining perfect 5-star rating status is not easy, but it is at the core of our festival. Treating our filmmakers right, many of them may not be able to travel out here in February, but we must find a way to still give them the best possible experience through a virtual festival. There may have been some questions about what happens if the festival is canceled. That simply is not a possibility. We are contractually obligated to our filmmakers since before the pandemic to hold the festival, even if that format would have to be virtual. The board of directors is very hopeful for having some form of in-person gathering, but we must be prepared for anything. Last season's 5-day event sported an attendance of over 5,000, but the promotion we provide for Boulder City is year-round. Through Boulder City's inclusion in our marketing materials, press releases, and word-of-mouth promotion, it is one of the main things that contributes to our identity. From the earned media we received for our poster art contest to recent interviews we had with News 3 and Desert Companion, Boulder City is at the forefront of our conversations. A quick side note, we just found out that we're a nominee for the Review Journal's Best of Las Vegas Awards, which again helps put Boulder City on the map. And so please vote for us. It's under Things to Do, Best Arts and Culture event. This festival season, we are focusing efforts on community partnerships and promotion of local businesses year-round on our website, social media, and off-season events. We realize that charitable donations will be hard to come by in the state of the economy, so support from grants like the Boulder City Special Event Promotion Grant is very important. The hardships we endure open our eyes to how much arts and culture brings communities together and enriches our lives. We promise to continue doing everything in our power to keep providing a platform for film, art, and human connection in Boulder City, virtually or in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone on hold?
Open our eyes to how much arts and culture brings communities together and enriches
Yes, I want to comment about the film festival.
continue doing everything in our power to keep providing a platform for film, art, and human connection in Boulder City, virtually or in person. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Joshua Abbey. I'm the executive director of the Las Vegas Jewish Film Festival, which is now entering its 20th year. We are currently doing a very successful monthly online virtual series that will hopefully culminate in our 20th event in person or some form of hybrid in January, which is our annual time frame. We've worked collaboratively with the Dam Shore Film Festival on multiple occasions, and they represent just the highest level of artistic achievement in the film industry, especially in the film festival industry. Hello?
Keep going.
I'm not sure I'm being heard. And the leverage that your support will create in encouraging other donors to help broaden their base, especially in this very difficult time that nonprofits, especially cultural and artistic nonprofits, are facing, will be very significant. So I highly encourage your support. Dam Shore Film Festival has an impeccable reputation, and many people come from Las Vegas as well as from all over the world to participate, and I just highly encourage you to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. The line is now available. If anyone would like to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Hello?
Public comment, go ahead.
Hi, this is Steve Sabo, and I'm calling in because I really feel that the Dam Short Film Festival should receive the Boulder City Special Event Promotion Grant. I've been in Boulder City for a few years now, and it's one of my favorite events that happen here. There's just so much hard work gets put into it, and I think it's so great that the community comes together and volunteers and helps out as much as they can. But yeah, so I hope that they are able to receive the grant. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you. The number again, 702-589-9629. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment?
Public comment.
Yes, I'd like to speak in public comment.
Go ahead.
All right, this is Judy DeShane, and I wanted to speak on a couple of items on tonight's agenda. One is the payment for attorneys for the council and the city to defend them. However, the accounting department feels is the best way to do this, I think would be fine. Just so the bills get paid. I also want to talk about the CARES grant. When I read everything and saw the proposal for how it was going to be spent, I had a lot of questions, which I did send to the council members. So I hope those questions can be answered in tonight's meeting, as it left me rather confused about what we were doing with the money. And if we really need 2 linemen to replace the ones that have left, I would be okay with that. And the Park and Rec child provision, apparently from what was in the packet, it is not needed because others have stepped in and filled the void and everybody is happy. So I would suggest that the money that the Park and Rec had to expend over the last 2 weeks of providing this and keeping summer program open till they could get a read on what the community needs were, that be reimbursed to the budget out of the $150K that supposedly is allocated out of the CARES money. And after they are reimbursed, their budget is reimbursed for what they spent for the last 2 weeks on the special program, that then that money be reallocated to other needs. Additional support for small businesses would be one, and possibly a donation to the 3 organizations that stepped up to the plate to fill in for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, anyone wishing to speak in public comment on items on the agenda, the phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Hi, this is Deb Finnegan. I'm calling on Agenda 7 tonight. I just real quick just want to say how much I love the festival, how much I think it's a unique experience that we have in our town, bringing hundreds and hundreds of people. And I know that financially it's going to be hard for them without the ticket sales if we have a virtual one. I've been watching virtual film festivals online and they work pretty good, but I know the money's not there, so I just would appreciate it. I volunteered there for years and just really like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the phone line is available for public comment. The phone number is 702-589-9629. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment on items on the agenda, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, do we have any written comments? Why don't we go ahead with those, please?
This is from Bruce Benke regarding item number 7. I heartily support the application for the $5,000 matching grant to enable the Dam Short Film Festival organization to conduct the 2021 exposition next February in Boulder City. I am a 6-year volunteer, and I witnessed each year the international scope and reach that this festival commands in filmdom. When people refer to the pageantry and creativity of film festivals in the Western states, Boulder City is always mentioned. Sundance has nothing on our Damn Short Film Festival. Give them the bucks. Thanks. Next is from Stephanie Clark, also regarding item number 7. The Boulder City Damn Short Film Festival is a vital part of the art and culture in Southern Nevada. I used to attend the Sign Vegas Film Festival scene, and when it stopped, it was a big loss for Las Vegas. The film festival brings tourists and money into Boulder City that normally wouldn't come to the city. Arts are so important for a community, and it would be a shame for Boulder City to lose this event. Next is from Isla Crowley. I have been associated with this festival as a volunteer from the beginning and have found it to be very well and responsibly run by those involved, building it from a tiny event to one of the premier festivals in the film industry. Part of this is due to their creative and successful use of social media and advertising. This is an important event that enhances Boulder City's image and in normal times brings in a lot of visitors. Whether this turns out to be a normal year or if the venue must change, advertising will be especially important this year to get the word out. I therefore feel the Damn Short Film Festival is a deserving organization to receive this grant. Next is Susan Phillips, also regarding item number 7. I have been a resident of Boulder City for 10 years and now reside in Henderson. I am familiar with the community and know how the Damn Short Film Festival is a major cultural event, a golden nugget really, that has put Boulder City on the map culturally. I have attended and volunteered at the festival 15 of its 16 years in existence, so I have firsthand knowledge of how valuable it is to Boulder City and how it benefits local businesses. It would be in the best interest of the community, both culturally and economically, to continue to support this event, which brings filmmakers and film lovers from near and far to Boulder City. Next is from Sharon Newby regarding item number 10. I would enthusiastically support this if there was a need. I saw Tracy Fulda's request for parents interested in all-day childcare. It appears from the survey that residents have already made arrangements for helping their school-age child. I know we have retired teachers that would be glad to tutor students, but it seems childcare has been taken care of for now. Hiring 17 people for this does not seem like a good use of these funds. I hope this money can be redirected and put to better use. And that's it for public comment for items on the agenda.
Thank you. Again, if there is anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. public comment for items on the agenda? All right, hearing no others, we'll close the initial public comment period and move to approval of the regular agenda. Madam City Clerk, any changes? Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
And is City Attorney available?
No changes.
Okay, with regard to the regular agenda, Mr. City Attorney, I did have a couple of questions regarding the items we'll be discussing for Bailey Kennedy. I believe those are items number 5 and 6. Will you be providing information on that or any guidance to City Council should any questions arise on those?
I have not been asked by any member of City Council to provide any guidance with respect to that contract. And consistent with my prior abstention to those matters, I believe it would be a conflict to do so.
Okay, again, what I'm trying to get at here is what's on the record for the current meeting. You know, there was a question when this came up previously, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, the council that you had designated to serve in your place then stated they did not have the training or experience to do that type of work to be able to answer questions that might come up regarding procedures, review of the contract, that type of information. Have you designated any council to do so tonight?
I have not been asked again by the council to do so. This is the first time, Mr. Mayor, that this question is being raised. It could have been raised in briefings, but was not done so by any member of council. And so to drop this on the city attorney's office at this point of time is highly improper.
As far as improper, sir, you're aware of the items that are on the agenda, is that correct?
That is correct, but the city has retained...
I mean, it is your obligation to review the items that are on the agenda?
Items where there's a conflict, no, that is not. And it is my understanding that the city already has retained this attorney and has consulted with this attorney regarding this very item.
Well, not with regard to procedural issues or regard to review of the retention agreement.
As to any legal matters that might come before the city attorney's office, again, this is the first that I'm hearing about it, Mr. Mayor. We would have been happy to have sent that out if that was the desire of any member of council, but it was not ever conveyed to the city attorney's office. And so to spring it tonight at this moment is improper.
I want to make something very clear to you, sir. I'm not springing anything on you. I do not believe it's improper to rely on the city attorney to have reviewed the agenda and know whether there are any items on the agenda that may present a conflict to you. The prior time that this occurred, you had presented somebody who you said was able to do that, although at that meeting, that attorney said they neither had the experience nor the training to be able to assist us with regard to those matters. So this is not being sprung on you, sir.
It is.
It is not, sir. You are aware of the situation. It is your obligation as council to be able to inform us of what your conflicts might be, not for us to bring those to your attention.
With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, the singular item that was asked of Mr. Booker was, have you reviewed this retention agreement? And he did not, and offered up that he was not capable of doing such. Mr. Booker was very nervous to be in that position. He is capable of reviewing an agreement and has been appointed by a prior council to be an assistant city attorney and has sat through close to 15 years of council meetings at various times when my predecessor was not available. And so with all due respect, he was terribly nervous to be thrust into that situation by this council, by the decision this council made to put on notice, improper notice, of termination. And so with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, this is being sprung on me tonight. This is an agenda item that the mayor asked for. And if you had any legal concerns regarding this matter, you could have consulted the attorneys that were hired for this matter back at the prior council meeting. And so, again, I do respectfully believe that this is indeed being sprung on the city attorney's office tonight in an effort to, again, try and create some type of alleged misconduct, and it will be noted.
I believe you have completely mischaracterized your role as city attorney and what's being done here this evening and what has been the history of this issue.
It is.
I believe you've stated your position, so unless you have something to add to that.
No, and I will not be weighing in, and there's no legal issues to be weighing in on this matter. The issue is regarding funding, and that doesn't require a legal interpretation.
I disagree, sir, that we have two items. One regards funding and one regards the retention agreement, which is being amended. All right. We'll bring it back to council then. Any other changes for the regular agenda? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me. Anyone wishing to make a motion for approval?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the regular agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move to approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk?
No changes, Mayor, but I would like to note there were some minor corrections made to the minutes and they're placed in front of you on the dais.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
No additional changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No changes.
All right, bring it back to council. Any changes for the consent agenda? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, I would like to move item number 2 to the regular agenda for further discussion.
Thank you. Any other changes? I'm also requesting item number 3 be moved to the regular agenda. Any discussion? Consider a motion then for those changes.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda with changes, including the amendments to the prior minutes.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That will bring us then to item number 2, resolution number 7149. We have Public Works Director, Mr. Luttrell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you, item number 2 is is a request to reallocate funding from one golf course project, the Desert Hawks Green Repair, to provide more funding for the Lakeville Auto Valve. The Lakeville Auto Valve project was originally in the fiscal year 20 CIP with a budget of $25,000. It has been brought to my attention here recently that this valve that controls the lake fill is a hazard or a safety issue for staff. In order for them to manually turn the valve, they have to climb down in a 6-foot vault and manually turn the valve. I'm being told that there's extreme pressures, water pressure coming into that location, and it's a safety hazard for them being down in there and manually turning it. If this item is approved, we'll put in an automated gate valve so that no one would have to climb down there to manipulate that valve. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, thank you. I asked these questions in our briefing, so if I make a mistake, would you please correct me?
Sure will.
Okay, thank you. There was a correction on page 23 and 24, which was just the correction of the name of the company, which I'm sure you'll take care of.
Yep.
And I did ask the question, why one bid? And you answered that it was under the threshold. I did forget to ask you, what is that threshold?
50,000.
50,000?
Yes.
Okay. And I noted that MSI did not have a valid county license, and the answer was that it was not necessary. I guess for some reason, I've always thought that if you did any business in the county, Clark County, which is almost the whole state of Nevada, right, that you had to have a license, and wherever the company, the business was, they had to have a license, and whatever city that they were doing the work in, they had to have a license. I know you mentioned that they didn't have a license with the city, but they have done a lot of work with the city. And I kind of question why they don't have a license with the city if they've been a previous vendor of ours. So I guess my question now is, can you tell me why they don't have to have a county license?
The county license, I'm still unsure of. I know they have a state business license. I looked up after that we talked. Yes,
Yeah.
They have a state business license. They don't have a contractor's license. So in order for them to have this valve installed, they're going to have Turf Tech, who has done a lot of projects for the city. They do have their contractor's license. They're actually the ones that did the recent landscaping project over in front of Parks and Rec. They're going to be the company that's doing the install. And then MSI is going to be working with them under Turf Tech's license.
So this bid that we have, does that include Turf Tech's? Okay, but it's not, it doesn't reflect that in the bid.
No, that's the entirety of the project is to get that installed.
Okay, so it's more like a subcontractor.
Correct.
And they're using the subcontractor's license? Is that correct? Because I didn't think that was...
That's the way it was stated to me, is that Turf Tech would be a subcontractor to them, but I think it's actually the opposite, because we require the prime contractor to have the contractor's license.
Okay, I understand that it is a dangerous situation, and I think we talked about it's been in existence for 20 years.
Yeah, we've been told this valve's 20 years old. It might not have been a hazard back in the day, but as pressures build up, the joints start to weaken, the pipes start to weaken. But after talking to the utilities director, Mr. Porter, he's saying that the wrong valve was installed in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about the butterfly valve. You said that was one of the reasons that it was dangerous because of the butterfly valve. And I brought up the fact that there is a butterfly valve in the contract. Yeah,
it says butterfly. We were a little confused about that, and we were looking at it. But right below it, it says butterfly valves, and then 8-inch, 150-pound gate type. So it's going to be a gate valve. I don't know why they labeled it as butterfly valve. But
that had me confused. Totally confused.
Me too.
Okay. So I understand it's dangerous. But I'm a little concerned that we don't know about the county license. Because it is so dangerous, if someone was injured in the process of doing this, and you've got two different contractors, one contractor and a subcontractor, I'm concerned of the city's liability. So although it needs to be done, I would like to see a little bit more detail before I could address it myself.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your help.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. I guess, could you try and clarify, I was following along right up until the point we started talking about the licenses and that they don't have a contractor's license, but they will be going through somebody who does have a contractor's license. But I think you made a statement, and this is maybe where I got a little confused, that we would be going through the person who holds the contract license, but that is not this person where I see this agreement, or at least this estimate here from. So I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to who is doing the work, who we're actually approving to do the work and all that sort of stuff, based on the information in front of me right now. So if you could kind of clarify that discrepancy and what I'm seeing versus what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Turf Tech will be the one with the crane to remove and reinstall. MSI is who's providing the equipment, and I'm sure that MSI will be the ones doing the the integration of the valve, since it would all be automated. But yeah, Turf Tech will be the ones down in the hole, removing it, installing the new one. And they're the ones that have the contractor's license and who carry the insurance, which I believe I saw earlier today was $2 million insurance.
And then, just out of curiosity, I'm not sure if you know this offhand, but do you happen to know how much pressure is present right now in that line?
I heard this when we were writing the staff report, and now I'm not remembering. I'm wanting to say it was over 150 PSI, maybe closer to 180, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, yeah, and it was just something that popped in my head after. It obviously a little bit more difficult when we have our briefings the same day as these meetings, so it's a little bit harder to follow up, but thank you. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this. Thank you.
Anyone else? I would just say, based on the explanation you've given, I'm looking at the resolution, and the resolution is for us to approve the movement of money from the CIP general fund to this particular project. But I'll have to tell you, I'm very concerned when we include an estimate within this for the cost, when I hear that they either don't have a license or they're not licensed to do this type of work, and that they don't have a business license for Clark County, or perhaps even a business license here in Boulder City. I understand the resolution is not specific to this particular bid, but it's the only bid that we have. I'm just very uncomfortable about that. It's been brought up by Councilmember Hoskins regarding liability coverage. We're basing a decision here on an estimate from somebody who doesn't have a contractor's license to do the work. The whole process just makes me very uncomfortable. I understand the project needs to be done, but well, again, anyone else? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering, the company that MSI Automation, have we done business with them before?
Yes, we have. And they've carried a business license through the city up until recently. I was told that it lapsed. I don't have the reason why it lapsed, but they said they would be in tomorrow morning to get their license renewed.
Okay, so it was, what is the length of process of getting this license?
To my understanding, they just come in, fill out the paperwork, and pay the fee.
Pay the fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that might even be automated since of the situation we have.
So they would be covered under the insurance policy of the contractor, even though the bid is made by the subcontractor. So MSI Automation would end up being their subcontractor,
yes,
licensed in Boulder City as of tomorrow.
Correct, yes.
And Turf Tech holds the insurance.
Yep.
So if anything happens, it would be their liability.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add that my understanding of the state contractor's licensing process, this isn't that. You don't get to do a bid. Matter of fact, my understanding of it is it's illegal to produce a bid or offer an estimate unless you're licensed to do that work. That's what makes me very uncomfortable about this.
It's my understanding of this company doesn't typically do this line of work. That's why they don't have the line of work of installing, doing the labor. They repair pumps, they fix valves. So that's why they're providing the quote for the material. And it could have been spelled out clearer that Turf Tech was doing the actual installation.
Yes. Anyone else? Anyone wishing to make a motion on resolution number 7149?
I'm not prepared to make a motion, but I have the thought that maybe it's best to put this in abeyance until the following meeting to but I'm not really sure exactly what we're looking to specify or what clarity we're looking for that could change from now to then, because I agree that the work needs to get done, but I do, maybe it's just because right here, the way it was presented here in the packet and based on the information, it's not really connecting into my head. There's a disconnect there. So I'm not sure if that can change between now and then. But that's where I'm at. That's the direction I'm thinking might be the most appropriate so that we can address this soon and make sure the work is done. But that's where my head is at. So I'm not sure what that motion would look like.
A recommendation that I might have is have Turf Tech bring this back since they are licensed and insured with MSI supplying the materials to them.
Anyone wishing to make a motion on this item, on resolution number 7149, approval of it?
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and make that motion to put it in abeyance until the next meeting when we could receive a appropriate contract by the licensed contractor, and also know that MSI Automation has a current Boulder City business license.
Anyone wishing to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, just to clarify, is there sufficient time, a 14-day period, to bring this back at the next meeting?
Yes, this would be an exception just because of the situation, because we go over the agenda tomorrow in staff meeting, and we can just put it right back on.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of holding this in abeyance until the next regularly scheduled council meeting?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Luttrell, will you also be speaking to item number 3?
I will. Item 3 is our biannual city surplus auction. On the list this auction is 6 vehicles and 1 flat file. 2 of the vehicles are from the electric division and the other 4 are from Public Works. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Again, the question that I'd had this afternoon during my briefing was whether these 6 vehicles are operational currently. And you had indicated, or someone had indicated that, yes, they still were in use. Is that correct?
They're operational, but they've reached their useful life for the city.
Okay. Again, with this whole vehicle equipment replacement fund and scheduling of things, again, I'm not sure, I believe it was Mr. Sikora, who's the purchasing manager, had said that these vehicles, their place in the fleet had already been done by purchasing vehicles from last year's budget. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And again, the reason I want to clarify that is here we're talking about 6 vehicles, and we already had a long extended thing about whether we supported public safety by the replacement of a rescue unit. And here we're talking about 6 vehicles. But apparently the money has already been spent to replace those vehicles within our fleet, and all we're now doing is auctioning off the obsolete or used up or junk vehicles, whatever we want to call them.
Correct.
Okay. And again, I just want to make that clear for the public and for the other council members, because we did have such a discussion about this particular fund and how it's being used and the money that's available and all of that. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to clarify what is happening with these vehicles, that the money was actually already spent to replace them, And this is just now the end of the process to see these vehicles go somewhere else.
You are correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, I will make a motion then for approval of Resolution 7150.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Mr. Luttrell, thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move now to item number 4, bill introduction 1885.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce Bill number 1885, read the title, waive the reading.
Thank you.
Bill number 1885, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City to approve agreement number 18-1808A, an amended and restated option agreement between the City of Boulder City and Silver Peak Solar, LLC, for lands within the El Dorado Valley. Bill 1885 will be considered at the September 22nd regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. That brings us now to item number 5, Resolution 7151, regarding an amended agreement to retain the law firm of Bailey Kennedy to render legal services to the city and City Council in connection with litigation entitled Noyle et al. Versus City of Boulder City. I had requested this item to be presented because of discussions that occurred after the original retention agreement was presented, that Councilmember Bridges was unable to sign the agreement or felt there was a need to abstain. Again, that's not at issue here, and I'm not interested in bringing forward any of the reasons for it. That's just why we're having to consider this amended agreement here this evening. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I would like to abstain from voting on items 5 and 6.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Again, I believe that this is in the best interest of the city that we do retain this firm. I believe that the amendment that has been done to this does not significantly alter the terms that were already presented earlier. And with that, I will move for approval of Resolution 7151.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that will be with Councilmember Bridges abstaining. That then brings us to Resolution number 7152 regarding the allocation of funding for Bailey Kennedy. Mr. City Manager, I believe you have recused yourself from this via an email sent earlier to the City Council.
Yes, if you recall, I sent the email that any discussion on this particular item, that the Finance Director would be my acting City Manager for this item.
Thank you.
And she's here.
And Mrs. Pelletier is the Finance Director. I know there have been discussions that the funding may already exist and that this resolution may not be necessary. If you could explain that to all the council members as well as for the public's benefit.
You just stole my line. But legal expenditures are eligible for payment from the Risk Management Fund. And that fund was created in April of this year, and the preliminary funding was done in May through the augmentation, and there's been money put in there in the New Year's budget too. So no action is needed on this item.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify, when I look back at the budget we did approve in May, it was showing no funding for the Risk Management Fund at that time. Since that time, and since I requested this item, you had forwarded some information to me stating that there was $1.3 million in this fund, although the actual screenshot image account breakdown that you had sent showed $300,000. So the amount is actually $1.3 million that's in this account.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other known expenses right now at this time?
No, we pay the insurance out of this account too. So there are other expenses paid out of this account, but there is enough money in there to handle, hopefully, these legal expenses.
Okay, and is there any issue then once this firm, or if this firm begins to present bills, how would that process occur then?
The process for bill payment on these legal bills is like any other bill at City Hall. The person who knows what was done has to review the bill and sign off on it, saying it can be paid, and then that information is submitted to the finance department, and then of course we need the contract too, and then we pay it.
The contract being the retention agreement, or?
The contract for the services.
Which in this case would appear then to be the retention agreement. That's where they state their costs and terms and all of that. Okay. Any other information that you have on this or that you'd like to make us aware of?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you. With that explanation, it does appear to me that this resolution 7152 would not be necessary at this time. Any other discussion or comments from council? Councilmember Foley?
I would just agree with the statements that Ms. Pelletier has stated, that that there's money in an account that we could use for this.
Any other questions or comments? All right then, with no need for action on that, we'll move to, thank you, Mrs. Pelletier. Move to item number 7, Resolution 7153. Mr. Mays, our Community Development Director.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The Damn Short Film Festival has submitted an application for the special event promotional grant in the amount of $5,000, not to exceed that dollar amount. The special event promotional grant is money that the City Council budgets every year to help promote events that occur within the community. The two criteria with the grant consideration are attracting people to the community and supporting local nonprofit entities. In fiscal year 21, the City Council approved $34,000 for this grant program. This application is the first application to be considered by the City Council within this fiscal year. You have the applicant's information regarding the budget, and that portion of the budget that would be utilized to promote the event, which is per the grant guidelines eligible for reimbursement. One of the concerns the council has expressed in briefings regarding this grant program is, what if an event does not move forward? So one of the conditions for the grant is that the entity would not be reimbursed if the event does not occur. And certainly I can answer any questions about the grant program, but we also have the Executive Director, Svetlana Stefanova, here that can answer any specific questions about their application.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would like to disclose that my partner, now wife, Svetlana Stefanova, is the Executive Director of the Damn Short Film Society, and for that reason, I am obligated to recuse myself and will be abstaining from the vote.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I was impressed with this can-do attitude that not doing it is not an option. I mean, I understand there's contracts already signed with the filmmakers and so on, and I'm looking forward to hearing how this might manifest itself in some sort of hybrid form, especially in order to have funds coming in, not just having people watch the movies or the films for free. But it sounds like you've got some models out there of how it's already being done. But that's it. Thank you. look forward to it.
Any other questions or comments? I had a couple of concerns about this, and one is that within the guidelines for the grant, there's a requirement or a guideline that says that the event needs to show that they're increasing the number of visitors to Boulder City year over year. Is that correct, or is that a misread by me?
No, Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. And let's hope that, COVID-19 gets to be a memory by the time this comes around. But if the guidelines were still in place, limiting the number of people gathering, and therefore the attendance would be far below what it's been. I believe the number that was quoted in the presentation from the organization was 5,000 visitors to the community?
That's correct in their letter as part of the application.
Okay. What is it about that guideline then that, let's say that COVID-19 unfortunately is still with us, attendance for next year's or the next festival goes way down. What happens the following year?
In terms of how that would be evaluated?
Yes.
Well, I think part of what the council needs to consider as part of the criteria is both potential in-person attendance, but also the promotion of the community to future potential visitors to Boulder City. The intent with the grant program is that the city subsidizes the advertising expenses so that these nonprofits will spend more on advertising, promoting the community in the process. And so as you evaluate this, certainly that is part of the consideration, Mayor, is looking at the number of people who attend, but also what are they doing with those dollars to help further promote the community by extension through their special event.
Okay, so if the COVID-19 pandemic guidelines have an impact on attendance at the next festival, that's not a bar to any future grants?
Not a bar, no, because you have several criteria that you're looking at, and that's one of the ones to consider.
Well, and again, when I look at those criteria, there's an and in there. It's not an or on the wording of it.
So you're concerned that if there's a low attendance this year and they increase it the following year, does that meet the criteria or not?
Well, if we look at the attendance from this year's festival to next year's festival, and if the COVID-19 guidelines are in place, it would seem that there would be a significant drop-off in attendance. What does that do to future reimbursements?
And I think part of that is the definition of the attendance. Is it virtual attendance? Is it in-person attendance as part of the consideration?
Well, I'm pretty sure it says in their visitation to Boulder City, but certainly this is one of the great events we have here in Boulder City. I believe it says that this will be the 17th year for them. Svetlana, would you like to answer some of it, or what plans there are? And again, my concern is not so much that this isn't a great event. It's a great event for Boulder City. It's great for a number of reasons. We are in a situation where we do have decreasing tax revenues coming into the city as well. But we've already seen a number of these events have to be canceled, starting back in March with Spring Jamboree, Best Damn Barbecue. Many of the nonprofits that come with this program have already announced that they're unable to go forward. Do you feel that there's going to be a drop-off in this attendance, whether it's virtual or, and again, I don't know that we could have anticipated a situation that we're in right now with this virus where we're talking about virtual events rather than actual events. My understanding of this whole program was we use tax dollars because it helps the businesses. So the taxpayers of Boulder City put money in for these advertising costs because somehow that money is supposed to come back in the form of increased sales for our businesses. So can you speak to that at all, how that may be a benefit?
Sure, and I totally understand your question earlier about what happens if, say our attendance is lower, what happens for our application for next year, that because we're supposed to, in the guidelines it says we're supposed to show continued growth. And I mean, nobody, as you said, nobody anticipated that we have to be dealing with this pandemic. And I think what's on every event's mind is how do we make it to 2022 and beyond, and continue serving our community. And I think something to consider is the fact that we do our advertising year round, and it's all the press that we get. As I mentioned in my public comment, Boulder City's always at the forefront in all our, all the photos that we post on social media, everything. It's Boulder City, Boulder City, Boulder City, because that is so much of the identity of this festival and the way the filmmakers feel when they come here and they're treated by the community. And it, brings people here once and they keep coming back. So I don't know whether the exact criteria of the grant is to say that specific event, how many physical bodies show up during that one particular event, or it's kind of more broad as to the general promotion of tourism to Boulder City. And that's how I see it, especially right now with the pandemic. I think every time that I post a post on social media, I think it reminds people, oh yeah, I was at the Damn Short Film Festival and I went to eat over at whatever restaurant and I went to the antique shop. Why don't I go down there this weekend? So that's kind of how I see it. And I do feel like having this virtual component is actually a really great new way for us to reach way more people, depending on how far reaching that virtual side is, because they're with each program block. So normally we have about 45 minutes to hour and a half program blocks that have about 6 to 12 short films or music videos in them. So the way that the virtual, there's different ways to do it, but we would still have the program block as a virtual screening. But before that starts, we still have our trailer that promotes businesses and Boulder City and this event. So there's ways to promote Boulder City virtually to a whole new audience that we've never been able to, potentially haven't been able to reach, and still retain our old audience, and also filmmakers that can't travel all the way from wherever they're from. So I think I think right now we just need to be creative in the way we approach this situation with the pandemic and see the opportunities that it actually arise before us.
And it certainly looks like, you're making every effort in that. My concern is about the way that this particular program is worded. I do get that a film festival certainly lends itself much more to a virtual environment. I believe it was Worst Fest had decided they would take their silent auction and go online with that, and continue to try and do their fundraising that way. So obviously the situation is forcing us into situations we couldn't have foreseen before. Again, I know, just from being in town when this festival occurs, the number of people it attracts to Boulder City and folks that might not come here otherwise. So it is certainly something that for the business community is of great significance to them. I'm just a little concerned about, the way things are worded, and, we're looking for a bang for the buck out of this reimbursement. So I'll leave my comments there. Any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, in fact, thank you. I have a question for Michael. I want to make sure I'm reading this correct. The promotion grant program guidelines, the issue of the growth, demonstrating visitor growth, that is under evaluation criteria as opposed to eligibility criteria?
That is correct.
Okay, so without having shown visitor growth, that's not part of eligibility. The eligibility is what they need to demonstrate and who will not receive support. But visitor growth is a qualification that can be reviewed and evaluated based on certain criteria. It's not a no-go. You understand what I'm asking? That it's more of an like I said, it's titled evaluation criteria, and it's assuming that the applicant has already qualified for the grant. It's just there's a priority listing, say if 6 people had applied for it, the one that showed visitor growth might go to the top of the list.
Well, I think, Councilwoman Bridges, I think your question is with subsection 2, eligibility, in order to even receive the funds, they must demonstrate those items.
Right.
And under 3, the evaluation criteria, as it states, after qualification, the minimum qualification, applicants will be reviewed and evaluated based on the following criteria. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the consideration in whether you would provide the funds or not. So yes, there is the distinction between minimum eligibility and the criteria you evaluate as you're determining whether to grant the funds.
Okay, thank you. And I also, coming from a marketing background, I think it's so important to realize that sometimes you can't count the consumption of the product as being the intent. It could be 2 years down the line or 1 year down the line of bringing more people in and keeping our film festival top of mind no matter how it's put forward this year, whether it's virtual or some hybrid method. So I personally think we should go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Since my house was used for one of the small short films last year, I'm interested in seeing this go forward. And if I get a chance, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I mean, obviously this grant isn't, the intent of it wasn't to have a virtual huge party. Just the conditions that we're in right now have made it change. I am glad that they're looking, and this is probably one of the events in our city that could move to more of a hybrid just during the circumstances. I just want to reiterate, I know that's not the intent of this grant. It won't be the long term, but heaven forbid this becomes our new life and we can never have more than 50 people gathered. Then maybe we should revisit how we support this grant. So I just want to reiterate that. I mean, they are taking a risk as well. If for some reason something happens where it's canceled, they won't be reimbursed. And so there is a risk, and I'm sure that they're aware of that risk, that if it's canceled, that they don't get that reimbursement either. So they are taking some risk as well. So I don't know. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you. And again, I that's the intent of my questions too, is the risk to this particular event. And as I mentioned earlier, there are events that have already had to cancel. So there was, I believe, $34,000 that had been budgeted for this. We are losing revenue because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the amount of money is not expected to be paid out because some events have already been canceled. So, there's already been a reduction within the budget because of the events that have had to cancel. With that, Councilmember Bridges,
Oh,
did you have additional
Yeah,
comments?
I just wanted to second her.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I just want to have clarification for if the event has to be 100% virtual. Does there need to be a stipulation for us? I just don't want there to be any surprises at the end of the day if we have to say have it fully virtual without any in-person events. And I don't know if you need.
Mr. Mays? I guess we would get back to the eligibility criteria. First bullet point, all events take place within the city.
And I guess if you're holding the event in the city in some capacity that meets the minimum eligibility, even if you don't have public participation. But if it's being held outside the city, then that would make it ineligible.
And so what I would suggest is that you make real sure you set up a movie screen somewhere in town and you project a movie onto that screen at some point.
Mayor, if I may just interject here, perhaps maybe the sponsor could suggest that they are in fact hosting, therefore the event is actually being hosted and done here in Boulder City, is that correct?
Exactly, I was gonna bring up that we would have events like Q&As for filmmakers that would be virtual per se, hypothetically. We could host those at, say, a business where we're projecting from. So we could feature different businesses in that way, but, at a limited capacity, situation.
And I understand, and again, the magic of the internet is all well and good. Make sure you do something in Boulder City and then we'll be fine, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Hoskins, you had indicated you'd like to make a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 7153.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move to item number 8, Resolution 7154, recommended uses of CARES Act funding. And we have Mrs. Pelletier, the Finance Director, again.
You'll have to turn that on, Diane, the little remote on the side at the top.
Diane Pelletier, Boulder City Finance Director. On August 11th, Boulder City Council approved Resolution 7141 with amendment of recommendations and plan to be provided on September 8th. So the resolution that was approved was accepting $1.5 million for coronavirus relief funds. So I have a short presentation I want to do on that. July 2020, Boulder City received a sub-grant for CARES Act money in the amount of $1.5 million from Clark County. This money is subject to the CARES Act restrictions, and any that is not spent by December 4th, 2020 needs to be returned to Clark County. As public safety payroll is a permitted use, and that amount of grant money received will be less than that spent on public safety payroll prior to the cutoff date, no money is expected to be returned to Clark County. So we're going to have some uses that we're going to recommend, but all recommended uses are up to figures, as any unspent funding needs to be returned to Clark County, and that is the way everybody who's accepting the CARES Act money is formulating their budgets. So any unspent money allocated to business grants, communication compliance, and an all-day child program would be allocated to public safety payroll expense if those programs do not happen. So these are the proposed uses. Public safety is the first one, and that's up to 1.5 million, which could potentially be the whole amount. But we also want to allocate 80,000 for business grants, 20,000 to communication compliance, and there's a Parks and Rec all-day child program, if approved, up to 150,000. Now, even if that's not approved, we want to keep this line item in the budget just in case conditions change and it's needed later on. So, recommendation is to use the CARES Act funding for public safety payroll up to 1.5 million. Payroll for public safety is an approved expense of CARES Act funding. According to the GFOA, the city of Phoenix, Arizona is similarly using their CARES Act funding for the public safety payroll as well as other cities. And on September 2nd, last week, the U.S. Treasury also provided as an administrative accommodation that a state, local, tribal government may presume that public health and public safety employees meet the substantially dedicated tests. So this we received as late or as last week, so it was after the agenda went out, but I wanted to mention that. Whoops, okay. So the communications compliance, we recommend to use CARES Act funding for communication compliance because with the meetings having to be virtual, we need to fulfill compliance to make sure those can happen. And we want to have up to 17,000 for the television portion or the viewing of it. So currently, the meetings can only be viewed on the city website, and they happen with a delay of 45 seconds. So there's always that long delay between things said here and the people hearing it at home. And this enhancement would add TV and social media viewing options as the meeting happens. So it'd be live without delay. And this upgrade would allow for greater viewership of meetings and more public involvement, as well as less delay between on-air signal and call-ins. And I guess I'm still on the other one. Okay, and the last piece of this is mailers to businesses have up to $3,000 in the CARES Act budget for that. And that would be to reinforce COVID-19 business mandates. So we would be sending maybe to all our business license holders a letter stating, all the mandates that the state has that they must follow. So that would be just a reminder letter to them. So we wanted to add funding for that. So the total for communication compliance is 1.3% of the total grant, or $20,000, up to $20,000. This all-day child program, we have a recommendation to use CARES Act funding for that, in an amount up to $150,000. And I think that program was mentioned at the last meeting, the cost and the number of people it can accommodate. And there will be some discussion of that in a later agenda item. So Parks and Rec all-day child program, if approved, that would be up to 10% of the 1.5 million. And this could cost an additional $125,000 from the general fund budget for the remainder of the fiscal year. But at this point, I don't believe we're going to recommend that, but I don't want to do that item. I'm on this one, but I think the money should stay in there just in case conditions change and we need it later. So that would allow us to have it. And then the next portion of this is the recommendation to use CARES Act funding for small business grants, up to $80,000 allotted for that. And that would be up to 5.3% of the total grant. And these would be $5,000 or $10,000 for each grant given, and it would be based on criteria that will be discussed in a moment. And this also includes $5,000 for administrative costs. And Boulder City agreed to run its own program and accepting the funds from Clark County, because if we would have let them run it, then we would have had to commit an amount up front, and if we couldn't hit that amount, then they would have kept the money. So it was in our best interest to run our own program for that. So now I'm going to let Michael talk about the criteria they'll use to for the grant fundings.
Good evening again. So the Small Business Recovery Grant's intent is to help small businesses that have been impacted negatively by COVID-19. The city would use the National Development Council, NDC, to administer the grant applications through Zoom Grants. This is what other jurisdictions within the county are using to help process the grants, especially when you are asking for sensitive financial information. This is the appropriate venue to be able to provide that information, because one of the criteria for eligibility is demonstrating financial hardship as a result of COVID-19. Thank you. We've put together guidelines for this grant program that are similar to the other jurisdictions. The grant would be reimbursing expenditures by small businesses to pay for rent, utilities, inventory, COVID-19 supplies, and for payroll. It would be structured into 2 tiers based on the number of employees. So if a small business has 1 to 10 employees, full-time equivalents, they would be eligible for up to $5,000 reimbursement for these eligible items. If they have 11 to 20 employees, they would be eligible for up to $10,000 for eligible expenses. Obviously, any business within Boulder City that has more than 20 employees would not be eligible for this grant, as it is intended to support small businesses within the community. One of the ways that the grant applications would be evaluated is they would be ranked, and they'd be given point systems based on certain criteria. First and foremost, the objective of this grant program would be to provide funding to those businesses that had not received any previous federal support from all of the various programs. It would not exclude them from applying, but at least it puts those businesses that have not taken advantage of those programs first and foremost. We'd also be looking at the number of employees, and that would be a scoring criteria, and then also their profitability prior to COVID. The intent is if the business was doing well before COVID-19, and it was because of COVID-19 that they have been negatively impacted financially, that should give them a higher score than a business that just wasn't doing well regardless. And so these are the type of criteria that our Economic Development Coordinator, Rafi Fasekjan, as he was developing these guidelines, working with the other jurisdictions, came up with to be consistent with their program guidelines. So the reason why staff is recommending the $75,000 for this program is this is consistent with what the other jurisdictions have been doing with their CARES funds, earmarking 5% of the total toward this business grant program. And the additional $5,000 is for the administrative costs, again, to have the National Development Council administer that program for the city. And what we'd be looking to do is set up the program with council's approval and have it promoted this fall. And the other important point to consider here, besides the dollar amount, is the fact that with the city opting out of the county's program, this is the opportunity for our local businesses to take advantage of these CARE funds. They can't go to the county and submit an application. It would be through this program only. And so with that, we'll collectively answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mays and Ms. Pelletier for so with the CARES Grant Act, with the businesses, there were some questions, I received some questions about eligibility for a business with, say, one full-time employee versus the eligibility for a business that has, 10 versus 20. I know in here we have it separated, so 1 to 10 full-time employees is for the lesser grant up to $5,000, I believe, and then for 11 to 20 up to $10,000. But all of that is evaluated, so the amount that is actually reimbursed would be based upon the number of full-time employees.
One of the criteria for scoring and ranking would be the number of employees. However, if they have one employee, then they meet the minimum eligibility for the up to $5,000. Now, naturally, in that example, you're not going to have the same expenditures, payroll, for example, as opposed to if you have 6 employees. So there's greater opportunity for reimbursement.
And, there's been a number of businesses that have opened up within the year. And so maybe it's more difficult for them to show profit versus losses. Are those types of businesses even eligible for this type of program if, say, they opened up within the last 8 months or 12 months even? How much do they have to be able to show before they could even necessarily be considered for this eligibility?
They would need to have been open by September 15th of 2019, a full year in advance. The intent of this grant program was to try to respond to businesses negatively impacted by COVID that were established before the pandemic started. And so that's been fairly consistent criteria used by other jurisdictions.
And if one of those businesses was open prior to that date, and let's say they had been open for years, but because of the nature of this, they were forced to close their doors and they might not ever reopen, are they eligible for any type of this grant to maybe try and pay off or finish off whatever they were needing to do? Or is this only for businesses that still remain open today?
The intent of this is to keep businesses operating to support existing businesses.
And then I guess I'll just a brief comment regarding the communications aspect of it. I just wanted to say that, I think the increased accessibility that we have been able to provide for our council meetings and for our other public meetings has been a great benefit to our community. And I certainly do think that those benefits should continue beyond this state of emergency. I think it's really important that we always move to increase accessibility so that people have the ability to review what we are doing and when we are here doing the people's work. So I think it's important to have something like that in there, because I do think it's great that we've been able to do it up until now, but I think there is a lot of deficiencies that we can shore up, and I think it's definitely worthy because it's something that benefits us in the long run that I think should be continuing forward, even if this should end hopefully sooner than later. So that's all my comments for now and questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you. First of all, on page 194, the page with the resolution, number 7154, the 6th whereas says $80,000 for small business loans. And that was, I'm assuming that this is not a loan. This is not like the PPP program where it's a loan that you don't have to pay back. This is a grant, correct?
Correct, a reimbursable grant.
Reimbursable grant. So that would just need to be changed as opposed to a different definition of what this is. Because I know the one, they had to keep so many people employed over a period of time in order to not have to pay back the PPP. I thoroughly support the business grant program. I know that at Emergency Aid, a number of business owners have tried to come and get grant money for their businesses because they're just, they've had months where they just couldn't make their monthly payments. And it's good to see that there would be a program where they would be able to find some assistance. And I also agree on the communications aspect. I think it would be wonderful to have people be able to go on and stream and call in and not have to then wait 45 seconds for whatever they're listening to end before they make a comment. And that's about it. I think I'm concerned about the placeholder, the $150,000 placeholder. If that doesn't get spent, I mean, I'm assuming, and this is a broad assumption, that this is not going to be required, because I know that there really hasn't been a whole lot of interest in it. There's a cutoff date in December. If there is no request for that funds, that $150,000 would simply be put towards one of the other requests, like the payroll,
The public safety.
Public safety.
Public safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is the blanket, or that covers everything. So whatever is not spent in those other categories would revert to that.
We're going to public safety.
Yeah, and the final allocation would be done at a budget augmentation next May. So we would have exact figures that we would know what was applied to where.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Any others? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, I'm pleased to see the small business has been considered, because I know that they need the help, definitely. So that's my only concern. Thank you.
Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. For the BCTV, the dedicated streaming solution, is that a one-time purchase, or is that something that needs to be annually purchased? I'm not sure who could answer that question, but is that something like we could get with this $20,000, but then it needs like an annual renewal of licensing, or is that just a one-time purchase
I'm not
that
sure
upgrades
about
our
that.
system?
I don't know for sure about that. But
Councilmember, it's my understanding that's a one-time purchase for the equipment to be able to actually broadcast continuously and basically, in essence, real time.
Okay, so with purchasing that equipment, that's a one-time purchase that would give us that dedication for forever afterwards. Okay.
I don't think I left that stuff on my
Right.
desk downstairs, but at least we could get it for right now, and we could evaluate whether that would be something we'd want to continue going forward.
Right.
I don't think it would be a lot of money anyway.
Well, that's what I was considering, because is it something that we're
One-time purchase is what I was just informed.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I knew I brought this up here first.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then this other one might be for Michael, because it is with our businesses. And do we know how many is with Rafi working with our businesses? Has he, or do we, through our COVID EOC, do we have any knowledge about how many businesses have received any kind of grants or funding from the government?
I know with some of the programs, based on a survey that had been sent out to the business community, that over 100 had responded, Boulder City businesses, that they had taken advantage of some of the federal programs in one way or another.
Okay, so about 100 that we know of. Okay, and I think there's about, I'm gonna guess, 400 or so businesses. There may be more or less. I'm not sure if that's even close. Does anyone know the number of that?
There's 750 business licenses,
Okay.
but as it would relate to these types of businesses, it would be about 450 total.
Okay, I thought it was close. No. Okay, so about a third. So this wouldn't nearly get close to covering that. About a third of them have maybe received some kind of relief, and this grant can do about 7 to 15. Is there a way that we could reevaluate if this becomes a really competitive grant? We looked at first come, first serve also, if they've already received some kind of funding. But when it comes down to it, we're not going to be able to cover maybe all the businesses that are out there that might be wanting some of this grant. Is there a way that we could reevaluate or come back at that time to allocate any more funding, depending on the number of response that we get?
Yeah, that's certainly at the discretion of the council and augmentation of the budget.
Okay. But so far, we are fulfilling our agreement with Clark County as far as, we agreed that we would provide a small business grant. Did we have any other stipulations of how much money or how many businesses were helped through that grant?
No.
Just that we had one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. So, and then it looks like in the resolution that come December 1st, anything that's unused, we're going to move over that. So someone's going to be keeping an eye on, because that gives us 3 days before it goes back to Clark County. So we'll have staff working and not on holiday that week, right? Because that gives us a short window.
The public safety costs will be more than that by that point. So we feel very confident that we won't be, trying to spend money at the last minute, because those costs are much higher than this 1.5 million.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. One question I have, when we talk about the 1 to 10 or 11 to 20 employees, and it's listed in our packet as a full-time equivalent, there are many businesses, restaurants, motels. They may have a number of employees, but they do not work full-time. So again, that may not be clear to a lot of folks that, if there's a limit of 20 employees, the business could actually employ perhaps 30 employees, but it's the number of hours that those employees work. So if you had 30, but they're still working less than 40 hours a week, or some of them are, they may still qualify for this. Is that right?
Mayor, that's a good point, yes. So if a business has 40 part-time employees, they're each working 20 hours, then you could have a maximum of 40 employees. Each employee is 0.5. So yes, they would be eligible.
Okay, do we have any idea of these guidelines that are contained here? How many businesses are going to be eligible for this program?
Yeah, we don't have that information as to how many part-time and full-time employees each business has.
Okay, that's a concern of mine, that we may have such a small pool here that either no one gets the money or there's really no competition, that there's just a very small number of businesses that would qualify. So that's something else that could be changed tonight, is to increase those or put in some other group that, say, went from 21 to 40 full-time employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's certainly at the council's discretion. What we try to do is set up guidelines that are roughly similar to the other jurisdictions.
Okay, and so is that what the other jurisdictions are doing, is having it no more than 20 full-time employees?
Yeah, they all have up to 20 FTEs, but a couple of jurisdictions have broken it out differently, providing a maximum number of dollars for like 1 to 4 employees versus 1 to 10. We wanted to simplify it by just having 2 categories. And I think the intent is small businesses under 20 FTEs is kind of the target for these grant funds.
Okay, well, again, I'm concerned that where we don't know what those numbers look like here in Boulder City, that we've defined it too narrowly. But we just don't know. Is that correct?
As I stand here tonight, I do not know how many businesses would meet that criteria.
Okay. There was a comment made about the city agreed to run the reimbursement program, and this is directed more at for the city manager. That's a policy thing that, rather than, apparently the county would have done this for us or made it available that they could do that, but a decision was already made on how the program would be administered. a statement was made to Clark County when the money was received that that's how we would do this.
What we agreed with the county was that either the county administers the program on behalf of the city, which means that they kept those dollars, and if those dollars were not expended, then they would retain those dollars, or that the city would agree to do this small business program. All of those dollars would come to us. We would administer it generally as the county and the other municipalities are doing, which is in essence what we've done here, is develop that program in that facet.
Mayor McManus, if I could just kind of elaborate on that statement and add to what the city manager has said. The county gave jurisdictions 24 hours to make a decision on whether to continue with their program. And as our finance director said earlier, if we had agreed to that, we had to tell them the dollar amount. And if the city's businesses weren't able to take advantage of that dollar amount under the county's program, the county was keeping that money.
So in other words, the county gave us an offer we couldn't refuse if we decided to think about it for, like, say, a day.
This gives the city more control over the dollars that we receive.
I'm just saying then, the way the county presented it is, here's how you're going to do it, and if you hesitate, then the money isn't yours.
We would not have control of those funds.
Well, again, it's an unfortunate way when you're talking about hundreds of thousands, in this case 1.5 million, that programs like this get designed that way. But, you know, I'm not looking at city staff on that. When you start talking about real money, you ought to be having the ability to set real policy. And certainly having Clark County withhold this money for weeks and then say, you got one day to figure it out. Again, probably not the best way to do things. With regard to these grants for businesses, though, it appears to me that the amount that is being reserved for the city is at least 93% of all the money being received in this particular distribution. That's what it says for public safety.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Again, we can increase the business grant amount. We could double it then. We could triple it.
That's at the council's discretion.
Okay. You know, I know when we had talked about this before, I'm disappointed in not seeing something here for the purchase of personal protective equipment, especially with regard to our assisted living facilities. We don't know what things are going to look like here. And yes, I suppose if they fit the number of full-time employees, they could apply for one of these grants and they would be able to use that money for the protective equipment. But to not have that addressed with CARES Act money that's distributed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we missed the boat there. And I think it's a critical thing that we may see over these next couple of months that will make us look awfully short-sighted here tonight, that we are not preparing for what might be necessary for these businesses to be able to provide that type of equipment to their employees. So I'm very concerned that's not included in this as one of the options, or at least having some money set aside for that. With regard to the communications equipment, you know, we can get super speed internet and all that stuff. This purchase is to put the live stream into BCTV, is that correct? So Cox Communications?
It's for that, but it also allows for real-time streaming to social media such as Facebook, Yes.
Well, when you say real time, though, it's not real time because there's delay on the internet.
Currently, there is a delay, but with this purchase of this equipment, it would be in essence real time. There might be a second delay. It is a substantial increase in terms of the performance and real time, so that we're not waiting for a 45-second to 1 minute delay between what's being
Well, I'm
broadcast.
painfully aware of the delays. I watch
Yes.
the clock to make sure of what our timing is. I'm just, again, I'm not sure this is going to solve that problem, is what my concern is. So access through the city website, or are they going to have to know where to go somewhere else, some other link, or have a Facebook account, or...
We would actually be, providing the information on the website and other social media sites as to how they can access. They could either do it through Facebook, they'll be able to do it through the city website, and then there's one other social media site where they can get onto, YouTube, I believe it is.
I do want to get back to, this is not in the resolution, but it's a description of how this money came to the city. And what it states in there is that the state didn't give us any money. And so Clark County is giving us some money. I just think it needs to be on the record that, at least from what I've seen, that's a mischaracterization of what this money is. This money was provided to the city from Clark County, and all of the breakdown of the funds that came from the federal treasury to the state of Nevada indicate that the state of Nevada never received any money for anything in Clark County. So to say that in the absence of money from the state, well, that was never the intent. The distribution was to entities over 500,000 in population. So the city of Las Vegas and Clark County qualified for that, and the other money that went to the state of Nevada was not part of the money for Clark County. So the state never was supposed to disperse money to Boulder City. That money was dispersed to Clark County and was being held by Clark County. So I just want to make that clear in the record, that the state is not the one who failed or absence of or no funding from that particular source of federal money. And it is important, I think, to realize this is federal money. It's not from the state. Again, I'm concerned about the 93% of this that we seem to be reserving for the city, because the CARES Act was not intended as a revenue replacement for state and local governments. Matter of fact, at least at this point, the federal government has said there would be no reimbursement for that purpose. So again, I have a concern about reserving 93% of these funds for city costs. So I do think it's important we look to increase some of these things, perhaps create something for a PPE purchase, or if we increase the business grant amount. As far as the 100, well, the way this is designed, any of the money that's been set aside, if it's not spent or used, it defaults into reimbursing the city for public safety personnel costs. Is that an accurate statement, Mrs. Pelletier?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Which is what every other entity is doing too.
Well, sure, because everybody's short of cash because our revenues have fallen. So I do understand why everyone's doing it. I'm just saying that's not what the CARES Act necessarily said, was that you keep over 90% of the money to reimburse your own costs. The money was actually supposed to filter out into the community for a variety of purposes.
And that's what we're trying to do with this budget. But because of the short window of time we have, this is how we're presenting it so that we don't lose the money. But if something comes up, we can we'll be able to find ways to pay for it because we'll be reimbursing the public safety. So I guess without getting into specific examples, if one of these programs like this, like the small business grants, we have a huge demand, then we can increase that and we'll be able to offset it with the 93% becomes less.
Well, we're at September 8th right now.
I know,
so
but we just got this.
The time to evaluate that and make the changes that are necessary, that puts on a very short timetable, and I'm concerned about that.
And that's why we're doing the way we do.
And if it were to turn out that we increase those amounts and they're not necessary, it defaults back to...
Only if we put up to. We have to, if we use up to, then that money can stay in the city because we have the public safety component that will definitely use up that money.
Okay. So as long as we say up to, we can increase these other things or we can add other programs.
Yes.
Is there a prohibition in the CARES Act provision for this particular money that prevents disbursement of the money to an agency like emergency aid or the senior center for purchases, for rental assistance or use for utilities? Is there a prohibition? Or I know from reading the material, it just says, oh, they don't need the money, so we didn't put anything in there for it.
I do not have the whole bill memorized, but I believe we can.
I believe it was about 2,000 pages, so it's a tough one.
So I believe we could, and I think I meant to address that in the presentation, but we do have the Lend a Hand and the other program that can help folks with the utilities, and we are sending people there if they have the problems.
But we're not providing any money to them.
No, we are not.
Yeah, we're saying, yeah, we'll send folks to ask you for money, but if you run out or you just don't have it.
Well, they have the criteria at these organizations to evaluate the need and how much they'd be eligible for. We don't have that in the finance department in Boulder City. I guess we could put, if you wanted to amend this and add an up to amount for emergency aid or Lend a Hand or one of these other organizations, we could do that.
Purposes such as rental assistance or
you could do that.
Utility assistance or at the senior center for food purchases. I know Lend a Hand does a great job. I'm not sure where they might be at as far as reimbursement for drivers. I believe that is one of the functions where they actually have funds going out as payment. Most of it's volunteer effort over there, just volunteer time that's being done, not where they're going out and purchasing items. So as far as you know, there's not a prohibition against that?
We can add it in, and then if there's a problem, we can address that.
Well, we're trying to make law here tonight.
Go for it.
Okay, so there are things like that that can be done here tonight as far as saying we would like to see money up to this for a specific purpose.
I believe so. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't do that. You amend resolutions all the time, so you can add that to it. At least, I'm not an expert, but yes, I believe you can. And then if there's a problem, if we go back and read the CARES Act and say, oh no, well, we can't do that, we'll let you know. But I would say that we can go ahead and add that in tonight.
So Mayor, you do have the ability as a council to adjust this budget as you see fit, and we would just ask that if you do that, that you add not to exceed amount so that we ensure that any revenues or any budgets that are set aside, if they are not expended, then they will in essence default to the public safety line.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I'm curious, emergency aid has already received CARES funding and CHAPS funding and several other streams of funding, and I would be concerned about them receiving additional CARES funding on top of funding that's already been received through Clark County Social Services. Also, I would hesitate, not that I don't want to toot their horn, but I would hesitate looking into things like rental assistance. The paperwork required to get reimbursed for one rental takes several hours in terms of documentation, proof of impact, and so on. So as much as I'm sure that they would appreciate extra funding, they have received significant funding, about $250,000 to be used, and a lot of that by December. And that would be my concern also, because if it has to be expended on rent and utilities by December, we might end up having to put some of that money back. So that is my concern about using it for rent and utilities for emergency aid.
And we've already discussed that money that is not expended, the default in this is that it goes back to public safety personnel expense. Okay? Any other questions or comment? And I guess we don't know what the situation in emergency aid is as far as what their actual expenditures look like at this time.
I could tell you to the penny by tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, but we're here tonight,
Okay.
is my concern.
We're fine. Emergency aid has got the funding available for the time limit available to it.
So if I could just add one thing to that, because that is a concern. Now, if you'd want us to go ahead and cut a check to these organizations, then I believe that would cause us problems, because now they would have to spend it or give it back to the county or the state, whichever place they got it from, and we would no longer have control of that money. So I don't know if we'd want to do that as them requesting us to give them money between now and December because they've exhausted all their funding. I guess we could have it in there like that.
I believe we could word this in such a way that if we make money available to them and it's on a reimbursement basis, because that's essentially what all of this is, right? So when a business asks for money, they've already sustained the loss. They're asking to be repaid for revenues they didn't collect. So it's not a future funding thing. It's based on their past losses already.
I just want to make sure we don't jeopardize this money for the city. That's all. I'm just trying to make sure that we're clear in how we do it.
I do understand that, and that's what I'm attempting to do, is to clarify the different types of expenses. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'm going to call for then a 10-minute recess so that each of us might have an opportunity to collect their thoughts on how to amend this rather than trying to wing it. So why don't we plan to reconvene at 9:15. Thank you. All right, we'll come back to order. I've had a time to come up with some thoughts, increasing the small business loans to $200,000 maximum, setting aside up to $20,000 for food purchases by the Senior Center of Boulder City. And I do want to make clear that I am a volunteer driver for Meals on Wheels at the Senior Center, but I have no pecuniary interest with the operations there. And then up to $50,000 for rental assistance and utilities assistance to be administered via emergency aid of Boulder City programs. Were there any other recommendations or suggestions? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes. First of all, I was more generous. I said $250,000 for the business grants. I like the idea of PPPs for the senior center. I do want to reiterate, I do think that it would put EABC in jeopardy to receive money that has to be spent by December. Emergency aid currently has $158,000 that they have to spend by December. Or we lose it, and we lose it from the county, and we lose it from United Way of Southern Nevada, and we are dependent upon those grants on an ongoing basis, not just for now. And we have spent of that about $70,000 on rent so far. And it seems like the way we're going, because we're putting everything we can into that, but on the other hand, they have to prove COVID impact, that it's nice to know the money would be there, but again, I'm very concerned that if that money, we have to show that it was spent by that date, because we still have 2 United Way grants that are good until next May for $55,000, CDBG $10,000, and an OA grant through Clark County Social Services that are good until next June. So again, I hesitate to accept money from the city for that grant, especially for that very short time frame, because we're working very hard to make sure we spend every last penny of that before December 31st.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess my comment would...
On Adams?
Yes, thank you. I guess my comment would be just that the language be sure, and I think we've kind of made it clear that the understanding would be that as requested by these things. If it is that much of a concern, I'm not sure as to the legality of whether it's necessary to absolutely name them, or if there are, if we could just be a little bit more broad that any local program that is assisting in it could request that money. So I'm not sure if that's a possibility, or if it's important that we be a little bit more specific, but that it is as requested and not just cut out. But I think, yeah, I agree. I think I actually had 150 set aside for the business grant, so it sounds like between the 250, 150, 200 seems to be in between there. But that I do remember there was some discussion about PPE. That's something I don't know what those costs might look like, if that's important or not. So I'm not really sure how to determine what is an appropriate amount for that. But if we do want to include that, or if we feel we are adequately or that it is adequate where it's at right now, not being in here. So, but other than that, I do agree that the other inclusions or additions I am comfortable with.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, and again, I appreciate the comments that have been made. Mr. City Manager?
I just want to make sure that, as you had mentioned previously, that this is for reimbursement. And I just want to make sure that that is clear, that the intent is that we would reimburse, so they would make those expenditures and ask the city, so that way we do not run into the potential of losing those funds back to the county.
Yes, and that's been my intent all along. And I do think we should modify it, rental/mortgage assistance. You know, we are coming up on, I believe it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 days or less now of the expiration of the current prohibition against evictions. I see this as being a huge problem in Clark County. I know those are the numbers I've seen. I don't know how they apply to Boulder City. I don't know what the conditions are, because I've just never seen numbers on what that is. But certainly this is not to jeopardize any funding that emergency aid may already have. And as far as, you know, the time it takes to do applications and all, I am certain of this, that if we start seeing people turned out of their homes, whether it's a rental property or a mortgage situation, that's going to be a disaster. And that the clock is ticking. Now, it's been extended before. It's possible it could be extended again. But I think that is well worth the use of this money. And I don't think that $50,000 is an enormous amount of money that couldn't possibly be used. And as the city manager just pointed out, this would be intended as a reimbursement, so that if the money were not needed by emergency aid, it would go back to reimbursing the city for public safety costs. So I don't see where that's jeopardizing a program at all. I think it can be worded that way. I'm hesitant, again, Councilmember Adams brought up how to make that available. I don't know that the city would be able to do something of that nature on such short notice. Emergency aid already has some things in place to do that. So I think going that direction is, you know, I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying that under the conditions, it's probably our best opportunity. Okay, so there's splitting the difference on the small business loan possibility, or actually grant. Any other questions or comments? All right, I will make a motion then to approve Resolution 7154, the last whereas clause to be updated to, staff has prepared and submitted a formal allocation plan that provides a maximum of $1,258,373 for public safety payroll, up to $200,000 for small business grants and administrative costs, up to $20,000 for communication compliance, up to $150,000 to be used for all-day parks and recreation child program, up to $20,000 for food purchases by the Senior Center of Boulder City, and up to $50,000 for rental or mortgage assistance and utilities assistance to be administered via Emergency Aid of Boulder City programs. And then the last sentence would remain the same: unused funds as of December 1st, 2020 for small business grants, communication compliance, all-day parks will be in, so we would need to add in the others. The food purchases, the rental or mortgage assistance and utility assistance will be allocated towards eligible public safety payroll expenses.
Second.
Did you want anything for PPEs?
Well, that's the purpose of increasing the business grants to 200,000, is to allow them to determine how best to spend that money, or part of that expense, I should say. Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a motion and a second then. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to item number 10. Oh, excuse me. Item number 9, electric lineman, Mr. Porter with the Utilities Department.
Utilities Department. We currently require 2 full line crews to adequately and safely maintain, construct, respond to emergencies with the electrical infrastructure of the city. Recently, we had 2 employees resign and go elsewhere, so we're down basically to 1.5 crews, and at any given time, you know, if there's one sick or one on annual, we're basically down to 1 crew. So the positions are funded, so we want to move forward and fill those, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
And we really needed them today. I didn't plan that, by the way. So
that was going to be my comment. Was that it certainly?
I'm not near that good.
but that certainly it is obvious that I think that these types of jobs are important, especially when we have situations like we had today, and we have been experiencing other issues, and I'm not sure if those types of issues required this type of work to be done to resolve them, but I think it shows that it is important that these types of positions do remain to the importance of them being filled. So that's all my comments on this one.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, I would like to comment. Other than today, with all the heat we've had and everything, I'm certainly glad that I think we should have as many as we can get.
Well,
thank you.
Pre-COVID, I would have asked for more.
Any other questions or comments? Again, I would just say, when we first talked about this review of open positions, because the utility fund is self-supporting and at least has been, certainly those positions within that, I think, are in different consideration than positions supported by the general fund. We've seen situations over the summer and now today with the winds. I certainly would support this, and we'll make a motion to approve to make staff direction to go ahead with filling these positions.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Porter. Okay, item number 10, for possible action, staff directive regarding all-day child supervision program.
Good evening,
Ms.
Mayor.
Callaway?
Thank you, sorry. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Julie Callaway, Parks and Recreation Manager for the City of Boulder City. Item number 10 on tonight's agenda is requesting staff directive regarding possible all-day child care supervision program in response to Clark County School District's distance learning schedule for the 2020-2021 school year. As you will recall, at the August 11th City Council meeting, this agenda item was also discussed. At that time, City Council directed staff to continue offering the summer Kid Crew all-day supervision program for the first 2 weeks of the school year. Council also directed staff to do further community outreach to assess the community need for the Safe Key program to expand to an all-day child supervision program during the school year. The all-day program was extended for the first 2 weeks of the school year. Over the first 2 weeks, a total of 9 individuals attended. A few days with 0 in attendance and a few days with 5 in attendance. The average daily attendance for the 2 weeks was 2.4 children. All participants of the extended 2-week all-day supervision program have found alternative programs in response to the school district distance learning schedule. The Parks and Recreation Department created a survey and included information about the program, along with solicitation for staff and volunteers for the program. The survey inquired as to what residents' plans were for the upcoming school year and specifically asked what days all-day supervision was needed for our community. Staff emailed the survey to families that participated in the summer program, along with Safe Key participants from the school year. The survey was also put on social media, including Boulder City Social and 2 posts on Boulder City's Facebook page. The survey was also available on the city's website. Survey results indicated that there was not a huge demand for the proposed program. Most families indicated that they already had a plan for the school year. 23 families responded to the survey between August 12th and September 2nd. 7 families originally indicated that they had no plan. However, only 4 of them attended the extended all-day program at least once in the past 2 weeks. As of last Wednesday, all parents or guardians of the kids attending the program during the 2-week extension all had their child's supervision and educational component for the distance learning schedule for this school year taken care of. No one expressed a need for all-day supervision after Thursday, September the 3rd. These results were very similar to those in the Vegas Valley. Programs are available, but not even close to being at capacity. The supply of available programs far outweighs the demand. Staff did reach out to local organizations offering programs catered to students and the Clark County Distance Learning Program to find out what was available for residents. These Boulder City programs vary slightly, but include a study hall environment, certified teaching instructors, and hands-on education guidance. While Boulder City families are taking advantage of these programs, none of them are at capacity at this point. As mentioned, one of the challenge with offering the all-day program that we mentioned earlier was adequate staffing. Our current staff are not academic educators and do not have training or experience to facilitate the educational proportion of this distance learning program. We do not currently have enough staff to offer an all-day supervision program. We have posted the job announcement 2 times and still do not have an adequate applicant pool for the 55-hour per week program. The proposed all-day supervision program would require additional funding. As mentioned earlier, CARES funds could be used to offset some of the expenses for the program. Due to the social distancing requirements and cleaning protocols, more staff will be required than our typical Safe Key program, and therefore the estimated budget amount for salaries is greater than the daily registration fee for participants. Typically within our Safe Key program, revenues exceed expenditures. It is estimated that at capacity, this program would have an approximate $115,000 deficit. In closing, based on the community response, the staffing shortages, and the strategic goal of striving to achieve prudent financial stewardship, the Parks and Recreation Department recommends to not move forward with an all-day supervision program at this time. Should circumstances change, this could be revisited in the future. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I did want to make one clarification there towards the end. You were talking about, I believe, the Safe Key program. You said revenues exceed expenses?
Revenues exceed expenditures or expenses. That is correct. Typically with the year-round program, yes.
So we're making money off of that?
Revenues do exceed expenditures, yes.
Not sure.
Not by choice, not by design.
By how much? Do you have any idea?
By popularity of the program. Sometimes it's just a couple thousand.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fulda?
Thank you. So is it my understanding then, based on your comments just now, that Safe Key did not run today?
Safe Key did not run today. No, there was no need for it today. City Council had directed us to continue it for the first 2 weeks of the school year, which would have technically ended last Friday. Should any parents have needed it today or this week, we would have continued to offer it, but there was no need for it. As a matter of fact, there was nobody signed up for last Friday either.
Okay, were the families told to find another resource or were turned to the other resources that are happening in the community?
So, were parents told to find other resources? Parents were definitely told that we weren't sure if we were going to continue to move forward, that it was on the city agenda, tonight's meeting. But there were no people signed up for last Friday. There was no people signed up for this week.
Okay, but would they know to sign up? That's what I'm asking, if you told them it was for 2 weeks.
I'm sorry?
Would they know to sign up for this week, though, if they were told that it would only be 2 weeks?
If they would have needed it, we would have continued offering it.
Okay.
But there was no need. As of last Wednesday, everybody had additional, they had already made other arrangements.
Okay. I'll just state where I stand on this is, for me, if it helps one child, then it's worth doing. This isn't a business-making activity. This is a service that the city can provide to help assist members of our community. I put it out on social media again today to get a feel of what people were thinking, and I got a lot of positive support of it. Some people weren't aware of the program. So I just, this early on, I just hesitate to cut this program when I don't feel like it was really widely known. in the first place. You know, it's helped 9 kids this last 2 weeks, and I think that's a positive thing. You know, that's 9 families, or, you know, less than 9 families if they're siblings, that the city was able to help. We have money set aside for the CARES Act for this, so I wouldn't be reluctant to continue the program in the short term. You know, at this time, CCSD is only committed to having distance learning till December, and that's what the money that was provided for us would be run through the end of the year as well. So that's kind of where I stand. I feel like if it's supporting one child, although that would be really sad for that one child by himself all day, that's something that we can help do. You know, if money is an issue, I think we need to look at that as well. You know, if there's that someone needs tuition help for participating in these programs, those are the families that are probably struggling the most, that cannot have access to these programs either because they just can't afford to do so. Although I know it's not terribly expensive. It's $20 a day. I think that does add up, especially if you have multiple children. So that's where I stand on this. If, you know, I wouldn't be I would be hesitant to cut this at this time, but I would like to continue it for another month or 2 and see where it goes.
Any other questions or comments? What is in place as of last Friday? What employee resources are in place? How was the program functioning last week? How was it staffed?
For the last 2 weeks, it has been staffed with SafeKey employees, and we did have Debbie Barth, our youth center coordinator, who worked it for the first week. She has since retired. So we no longer have that, which is a 32-hour-a-week position for that. And we did lose an additional 2 staff members that worked last week. One is leaving town, a college student, to go back to school. The other one is reducing her hours because she is also going back to school. So right now we have one 32-hour-a-week position, the coordinator for the SafeKey program, and one lead who works 20 hours a week, and one afternoon person who comes after their job elsewhere and works 3 hours in the afternoon.
Okay, and are any of those employees willing to work additional hours if this all-day program were to be continued?
So I know our 32-hour-a-week position person would be more than happy to work her 40 hours a week. That would be fine with her. Our college student, I'm not sure how much flexibility she has, and I'm not even sure if she's far enough into her semester to really be able to gauge that, because I know that education is her primary, goal. And then we have our afternoon person is set. He cannot have more hours. He's got a full-time job.
And how many children would the one person who's at 32 hours be able to supervise?
Well, they would have to be, you always have to have 2 staff members. And then you remember your 20-hour-a-week people with a 11-hour day, you need 4 of those throughout the day unless they're going to only work one day, because they can only work 20 hours a week, or 2 10-hour shifts. But then you still are left with hours in between that aren't going to be facilitated.
And we currently on staff, we don't have those people, right? We're down to 3 people of various availability.
That is correct. In the SafeKey program, absolutely, that is the situation. Typically, we staff with high school students. Well, high school students are in school 6 hours a day, so they're not available in the majority of the hours that we need them. And there is some stipulations with kids. You always have to have someone that's over 18 work with anyone that is under 18. And the under 18-year-olds do not count in your child to teacher ratios.
Okay, and again, this is no reflection on staff, but I feel that we kind of missed the boat on this, whether it was not the ability to start early enough to inform parents about what might be available, but it seems that essentially people were told, and the planning was, we're going to shut the program down, so if you have a child, you best look elsewhere. Again, I'm not saying that that's what was done, but, you know, if it's like, well, we're only going to have a 2-week extension, and then if I'm a parent and I know I have to have care for my child, I'm probably going to get the clue that I need to do something else. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I mean, if we have no one in the program right now, these other employees are there for SafeKey, is that correct?
The staff that's currently working there, yes, are SafeKey employees.
That would be the 3 employees, correct? And are you going to have to hire additional ones? It sounds like you were saying you're going to need additional employees then.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Folda that we are in very difficult times here, and a reason for this CARES Act money was to try and alleviate what we can as far as the difficulties of that. So I'm not sure what the answer is, because essentially the program's already been shut down. So how do we restart it? How do we find out what we need to restart it?
Well, our directive was to find out the community's need, and based on all of the information that we sent back out and all of the information we got back, families had already had a plan. Okay. We would be more than happy to offer this program and to keep our employees working. We started, I believe it was the beginning of July, advertising for positions, of which we've had very few, and the majority of them are under 18, which has been very similar to what has transpired in the Valley. They have had hiring shortages. They have advantages over us because a lot of their normal SafeKey employees are full-time. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Well, it's not really a luxury. It's that the demand is higher there, so they're able to put people in full-time positions.
So they could still offer these programs because these people were still, their staff is still on payroll to facilitate these programs.
Right.
They're also finding they are not at capacity.
Okay.
There's some locations in the Valley that, you know, can occupy 50 students, and they have 3.
We are still continuing SafeKey though, right? So the before school hours and after school hours?
So we have not been at this stage of the game. However, yes, that is exactly what we will do moving forward. Not before school, because it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to have people drop off their kids for less than an hour.
And I'm just going by the program in Las Vegas. Yes. I know they do it before and after.
Correct. So what we will be doing instead is offering every single day after school for about 3.5 hours to give parents a break from all day distance learning, to give kids a break from being at their house, to just, whether it's mom needs a break from, you know, and can go to the grocery store by herself, or she can just sit in the home by herself and not have to, you know, again, be, you know, they can just, everybody can just have a break from having distance learning within the home. So absolutely, we will continue to offer that for the community to have that opportunity.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
I just wanted to say thank you for continuing this and really keeping your finger on the pulse of the needs of the community. As someone who has a kindergartner in her kitchen every morning at 8:45 going to school, I've been on that pre-K through 5th committee, and when they first started, I remember they were talking about whether or not to open the grand ballrooms in the casinos. I mean, they were talking thousands of children, and And certainly, the two things that have come out of it is, A, there's nowhere near the demand. And I mean, they started this months and months and months ago, nowhere near the demand. And also the realization that some of these children require one-on-one for 6 hours a day. That's why I warned them. That's 6 hours a day. But that you can't have 6 first graders sitting in a room with 1-2 adults and hoping they stay focused. So I just wanted to know, though, is there a chance that this could upscale in the event that, you know, December comes and all the grandmas in the universe go, no way am I going to do this for another 3 months or 4 months? That could it be scaled back up, looking for people to do this and to start trying to implement it as an all-day program if necessary?
Absolutely. What staff's recommendation is right now is to not move forward with the all-day distance learning program. However, to know that we can revisit it at any time when there seems to be more of a community need for it. We would also plan on continuing to promote and do all-day Safe Key when it is school holidays, because to our understanding, there still will be school holidays, and we are absolutely going to offer the all-day program for school holidays.
Council members, if I can just, again, just remind everyone that one of the critical components of being able to provide this program is staffing. And if we don't have the staffing today, that means we have to go out and do recruitment, we have to do background checks, do the fingerprinting, all those kinds of things. So we're talking weeks in the making to be able to go out and do all that in order to ramp up. So if in the future we're looking at starting the program or ramping up, it doesn't happen overnight because we just do not have the staff that is hired, has gone through all the background checks, and they're ready to go. So that is typically about 60 days, roughly on average, from the time that you start recruiting to get them, fully ramped up.
So how does it work when there is a school holiday and the program switches to all day? How does that work? If we don't have employees, how does it work?
We have a couple of options. We can extend to the applicants that we do have that have put in applications that are high school students. We can reach out to them, do interviews, and have them as temporary part-time employees for those particular days. We also would have the availability in that case to utilize some of our other Parks and Recreation staff. It could be lifeguards for the pool or sports officials, other recreation staff that on an all-day program occasionally would be able to balance that with their other recreation job.
But those people aren't available the rest of the time, or not willing to do it, or?
Well, most of them are going, like our recreation staff is going to be mostly high school students, so they would not be available most of the time.
So you're looking at utilizing them when they're going to be off school as well?
Affirmative.
Okay,
and keep in mind, Mayor, I just want to again reemphasize something that Ms. Callaway said, is that the high school students are not counted in the adult supervision ratio. They're in addition to that ratio. So when we look at our full-time staff or full-time staff equivalent that are adults, that in this instance, the high school students would be in addition to, but not counted as part of the ratio adult per children. So we would be limited to how many kids we could have in the program for after school or Safe Key during holidays, that sort of thing.
And we do have enough adult staff if it was an all-day situation when school is not in session. We could also utilize our Tiny Tot staff members, because they wouldn't be teaching Tiny Tots because they don't do it during, when school's not in session. So they might be also additional staff that we could utilize just to be able to facilitate that need should there be a large demand from the community to come to the all-day program when it is no school.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I do agree with the sentiment that even just one child benefited is certainly worth the value, in the sense that, you know, it does take a village, but I also am very hesitant with the idea that we don't have the proper staffing, and that we actually fail to meet the standards that we should be able to provide, you know. And so if we're not able to actually help even that one kid because we aren't able to adequately support that, which it seems a little obtuse when we're talking about a city and all of our resources and not being able to do that. But it obviously is a concern. And if we are having issues with finding appropriate staffing, if we are having those types of issues, you know, it's hard for me to say that this is where that money and time should go. That there are obviously a lot of needs that are demanded of the city right now, and services to respond to this crisis. You know, obviously, you know, Boulder City didn't make the determination that kids needed to have distance learning, and you know, I don't know any teachers in my family or anybody that believes that this is the best solution. But you know, I personally, nobody reached out to me to contact, but those that I did myself reach out to, you know, most of the struggles were not with the ability to facilitate the distance learning, but more so with individual needs of their student, and mostly so, I guess, issues with the school district and how that interaction plays in with the distance learning, things that, you know, we as a city couldn't even begin to address. And so it's not that I don't think that the program wouldn't be worthwhile or provide a valuable service. I just don't know that we have the means right now to do that. And I think it's unfortunate because we're kind of in this catch-22 where if we don't have the staffing, then we can't, you know, support it. But if we don't have the, you know, who's going to come and want to support it if we don't have, you know, the staffing or the availability? So we're kind of stuck in this damned if you do, damned if you don't position. Sorry for my language. I'm not sure that's appropriate here on council or not. But and so that's kind of where especially when we talk about weeks in the making. So if we suddenly see a demand, but then we have this demand, but then we're weeks out to be able to do this. So I don't know if it's possible for us to at least continue to see if, you know, that if there is people interested in staffing, so that it can be more we're looking towards that direction where this might be a possibility where we have jobs where we continue to seek out people who might be potentially interested in the positions. That then, should that need arise, it's a little bit quicker to jump onto that. I don't know what the logistics of that look like, but that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that I feel it's unfortunate that we're not able to do this right now. And, you know, the only, you know, silver lining is that it doesn't seem to be that many families impacted, but even just one, as was stated, you know, that's a lot, you know, that's, you know, every kid deserves an equal opportunity here. And so that's the balance, and it's just really hard to find with this one right now, and I just don't know that we are equipped right now to do that, which, like I said, it seems a little odd, being that we're a city with all the benefits of being a city government to provide such services. So that's where my head's at right now.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone wishing to provide direction to city staff?
I have a question, Mr. Manager. Would it be possible for us to continue seeking individuals? I don't know if seeking is the right word, but to kind of keep that availability or the option that we are still looking should that potential need arise? Is that
Sure, we can. If you're talking about recruitment, we can have open recruitment, and that's actually what we did back in July, is that we went out and we did recruitment until filled kind of thing. And so we can continue doing that to garner potentially additional staff, and that if there is a demand in the weeks or months to come, that we could be ready and ramped up to do that.
Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I just want to clarify then, what would constitute a demand? Is that one child? Is that 10 child? Like, where's our, you know, number for what would ramp up having full time again?
It's a great question.
So let me see if I can maybe walk this through. So currently today, with the staff that we currently have, the adult staff, not counting the high school, is we could offer potentially up to about 5 to 8 children with the current staff. Now, if the adult staff do not show up or you're saying no?
All day we couldn't. It's
We
a
could not.
55-hour-a-week program.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
unless we want to do a whole lot of overtime for 2 people.
What if we limited the hours, if we shortened the hours? Were kids generally coming in at 7 o'clock and staying until 6 o'clock, or was there a shortened period of time that they were actually there?
It definitely varied. 2 of the kids that came for 2 of the 9 that came the last 2 weeks, they go to separate schools and they do their schoolwork. They were just there to get socialization. So when we mentioned that we would go into the afternoon program, they were like, we're all about it because we're just here for socialization. So they're already signed up when we move forward with that program. So I think that afternoon program would really facilitate a lot of people. As far as how many would want it if we offered it, right now I would say not very many because we've asked everybody and there hasn't been very many who want it. Those that do have to have their kids on the computer logged in. Those 2 weeks we did kind of play with it and practice. It's very challenging. You have 2 kindergartners in 2 different classes. They're supposed to have their headphones on. You know, the supervisor thinks, okay, everything's good. Everybody's got their headphones on. You see the kindergarten little girl just like kind of, humming and watching her screen. And all of a sudden she raises her hand, teacher, and looks at the supervisor. Well, first of all, the supervisor's not a teacher. Second of all, she needs help. Well, she's had her earphones on the whole time so that everybody can do their independent learning. The supervisor has absolutely no idea how to even help this child because she has not listened to what the teacher has said for the last 5 minutes. And there's no means by which, unless we have one-on-one in one room, one-on-one in another room, there's really no way that we can facilitate this. One of the locations in town that is offering this program, the director of the program got with the parents, got with the school and said, get this teacher. So she's got a table of 5 kindergartners looking at a TV screen that she has hooked up, and they are doing that facilitated learning 5 to 1. We don't have the capability, we don't have teachers, they're using 3 certified teachers. So if we have 3 individuals on headphones, we're not going to be able to hear what they're saying, nor do we have the staff to, facilitate it. I've seen conversations on social media where parents are like, I have a hard time doing my kindergarten. I'm struggling with, not to point out any fingers. Oh, okay, yeah, how to count by 5s. So it's a struggle, and if it's not your child and it's been a long time since you've done times tables or whatever, and you don't know how to count by boxes, it's a struggle. So if we have 5 kids, we don't have the staff for 5 right now.
Because of hours or what's?
Because of the amount of hours in the day. And if we were to facilitate for those 5 and reduce the hours, then we're not facilitating for all of those afternoon people, which may be more than we even know.
Okay. I understand the struggle, right? These are extraordinary times. It's not ideal for anyone. I think the parents understand there's an expectation that we are not the educators, and that we can facilitate only so much, right? But at the end of the day, it's their job to make sure their kids get their work done and submitted. I think they understand that. So I would like to give direction to continue a eligibility list for employees to put it out to the parents who are utilizing this, that we will expand once there's a need, so that we will have a waiting list like we do similar with the swimming pools. If there's not enough kids, we don't run the class, right? Same thing with SafeKey. Once we get to a certain number, then we can run the all-day program again. Does that sound advice?
I would just add in, it sounds like there may be some existing demand already for the afternoon. So I would say, in addition to what you've said, that there be an emphasis on trying to recruit employees that could make that afternoon session a reality now.
The afternoon session is a reality right now. I mean, we didn't operate it this afternoon because we didn't know what was happening today, and we haven't broadcasted it because, again, we didn't know what council's direction was.
I understand.
As with everything, we have to have and be ready to have a plan A, B, C, and D on a moment's notice because we don't know which way the pendulum's going to turn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're ready.
Yeah. If life were easier, we would have never heard the word COVID-19. So is that acceptable, Councilmember Fold, if we add that in, that we want to continue the recruitment of staff, especially geared towards an afternoon program?
Correct. And if we could utilize current staffing, whether that's the sports or lifeguards or whatnot, so that we would open up more eligibility for an all-day program, then, it's kind of our priority. If we work for something, we can make it happen. We just need to know that's something that we want. So that's something I want.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of that proposal then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, Ms. Callaway, thanks very much. I'm sure you've got your hands full.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our final public comment period. Public comment at this time may be on any issue. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment, the phone number is area code 702-589-9629. Again, we're in the final public comment period. Anyone wishing to comment on any issue at this time, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Speakers will have up to 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak in the final comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, did we have written submissions? Let's go ahead, please.
This is from Richard Stevens. Honorable Mayor, City Council, and residents of Boulder City, the importance of checks and balances are the fundamental principles of local government. Boulder City has a city manager, city council form of government. This form of government combines the political leadership of elected officials who establish policies and develop the long-range vision for its future. To ensure policies are carried out to the entire community is equitably served, the city manager runs the operation. 2 of the current council members were not actually elected by the residents. They were BCCA members who were selected by elected city council members who had openly pledged allegiances and support to the Boulder City Community Alliance, a special interest group. The city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and municipal judge are hired on the basis of education, experience, skills, and abilities, and not their political or special interest allegiances. Elected officials and city staff should be preserving and promoting democracy, the very backbone of our society. Mr. Mayor and members of council, do you think firing city officials during a pandemic and hiring new, possibly inexperienced staff is an example of good leadership? Does that best serve the interests of the community at large? Have you not frozen other positions within the city? Have you given any consideration to how this change in leadership will affect city staff? Have you considered the hostile work environment you have created for employees and the negative impacts on their families? As elected and appointed officials, you should ask yourselves regularly, am I demonstrating by word and action the highest of ethical conduct and integrity to earn the trust and respect of appointed officials, employees, and the public? The council should be exercising its powers to work together to provide good governance. Please recognize the fundamental principles of local government and its separation of powers are being compromised on the basis of principle and justice should you choose to proceed with the firing of city officials. That's the only one I had.
Thank you. And hearing no others for phone in, we will go ahead and end the last public comment period and move to our last agenda item, council reports. We'll start at this end. Councilmember Folda.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hoskins.
Thank you, Mayor. This afternoon, I attended the Zoom Workforce Connection meeting. And the Workforce Connection, along with the Las Vegas Chamber, received the top award for the nation. There were 550 participants, so that was a very big achievement for them. I'm happy to be part of that group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges.
Not to sound redundant, but emergency aid does offer rent and utility assistance to residents of Boulder City for up to 9 months. So if you are threatened with eviction, going back several months, all the way up through December, you can get your rent paid. That is the establishment of several of the grants. Nobody in Boulder City should get evicted for non-payment of rent or mortgage. Utility assistance is also available, and the pantry is very, very well stocked. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, tomorrow, the Southern Nevada Health District will be hosting a virtual town hall / listening session. It's going to be from 3 to 5 o'clock. Right now, the health district is currently recruiting a district health officer to help provide health and administrative and executive leadership to Southern Nevada Health District and to the Southern Nevada Community Health Center. And so it's seeking community input regarding the attributes and qualities of the model candidate. So they're encouraging the public to go ahead and head over to the Health District's website. It's southernnevadahealthdistrict.org, which should be able to navigate. I don't know that I could just from up here explain how to get there, but it should be easily accessible for people to review. Again, that's from 3 to 5 o'clock tomorrow. And as I said, it is to try and gather input on what the community is looking for in a new health officer. Currently, we have an interim one, and I just got word that a recent hire for the assistant executive to that was just recently hired. So we are in that process. That process is continuing. This is the first of such sessions. I think there will be one more after this one as it has been narrowed down and a little bit further. So anyways, just wanted to have that information out there for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of meetings that I've attended recently or participated in, I guess we don't attend any longer. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority purchased the monorail. We'll see, but one of the significant items about that is when the monorail was first created, there were certain agreements put in place, franchise agreements. By the Convention and Visitors Authority purchasing it, they're looking to have the boring company potentially provide other types of transportation. The boring company has already built and completed the tunnels at the convention center itself, and there are plans to extend one of the tunnels up to the new Resorts International Hotel. So the boring company is looking at doing that. There may be some other creative things they might be able to do, but that is a potential future, limited future for the monorail project. Another was an interesting item that the RTC, Regional Transportation Commission, might be looking at. It's just a pilot, it's not here yet. Potentially having two-person automated vehicles that could be called to a residence that would then bring someone to a bus stop and allow them to utilize the transportation system from that point. So there are ideas out there. I've said it numerous times. This COVID-19 is harming our economy. The way that we make things come back sooner is to all be conscious of what we're doing, wearing the mask, washing hands, maintaining social distancing. All of those things are what's going to allow the economy to recover quicker. Thank you, and we are adjourned.